I saw messages between my boyfriend and his friend. He wants to leave me because I'm too stressed, but I'm afraid to confront him about it. Hello, everyone. I never thought I'd find myself in this situation, but here I am, unsure of what to do next. My boyfriend and I have been together for a while now, and like any couple, we've had our ups and downs. He's always been the easygoing one, the kind of person who just goes with the flow and doesn't let things get to him. Meanwhile, I tend to overthink, stress over the little details, and worry about things before they even happen. I know this about myself, and I've tried to work on it. But I never imagined it could be the reason he'd want to leave me. It all started a few nights ago. We were sitting on the couch watching a show, and he got up to grab something from the kitchen, leaving his phone unlocked on the coffee table. Normally, I never go through his phone. I believe in trust and privacy, and I've never felt the need to check his messages. But as I glanced down, I saw a notification pop up from his best friend. It wasn't anything suspicious, just a preview of a casual conversation, but something about the words caught my attention. I get why you feel that way, man. You need to do what makes you happy. A weird feeling settled in my stomach. My heart started pounding, but I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe they were talking about work or some random life decision. I wasn't planning to look any further. But before I could stop myself, I tapped on the message. And that's when I saw it. The conversation between my boyfriend and his friend wasn't about work or some harmless dilemma. It was about me. He was telling his friend that he wasn't sure if he could do this anymore. That being with me felt draining because I stress over everything. That no matter what he says or does, I always seem to find something to worry about. That he just wants to chill, to enjoy life without constantly feeling weighed down by my anxiety. And worst of all, he admitted that he's been thinking about leaving me. He wasn't sure when or how, but he felt like it was the only way he could truly be happy again. I froze. My body went cold, my stomach twisted, and I had to stop myself from gasping out loud. I read the messages over and over, hoping I had misunderstood. Maybe I was taking it out of context. Maybe he was just venting in the moment, and he didn't really mean it. But the more I read, the clearer it became. He was serious. His friend wasn't exactly encouraging him to leave me, but he wasn't stopping him either. He was being supportive, telling my boyfriend to do what's best for him. Saying that if he truly feels this way, then maybe he should stop dragging things out and just make a decision. That if my stress is making him unhappy, then maybe it's not the right relationship for him. I felt sick. I couldn't believe what I was reading. All this time, I thought we were okay. I knew I had my moments where I let stress get the best of me, but I never imagined it was bad enough for him to want to walk away. And the worst part? He never said a word to me about it. He never sat me down to talk, never told me that my anxiety was affecting him this much. Instead, he was talking about it with his friend, planning a possible breakup behind my back while still acting like everything was fine between us. At that moment, I felt a mix of emotions I couldn't even put into words. Hurt, betrayed, confused, angry, but most of all, I felt lost. Because as much as my first instinct was to confront him right then and there, something held me back. I sat there, staring at his phone, my mind racing. If I brought it up, what would he say? Would he admit it, or would he try to brush it off? Would he get defensive, turn it around on me, and say that my stress really is the problem? Or worse, would he just confirm my biggest fear and tell me that, yes, he's already made up his mind to leave? I heard him coming back from the kitchen, and I quickly put his phone back where it was, pretending like I hadn't seen a thing. But inside, I felt like my entire world had just shifted. I looked at him, watching as he sat back down next to me, casually sipping his drink like nothing had happened, like he wasn't secretly planning to break up with me. I wanted to say something. I wanted to ask him right then and there if it was true. If he was really thinking of leaving me. If he had already made up his mind, but just hadn't found the right time to tell me yet. But I couldn't. Instead, I sat there, forcing a smile, pretending to focus on the show while my thoughts screamed inside my head. What was I supposed to do? If I confronted him, I might push him away faster. If I stayed quiet, I'd be living in uncertainty, waiting for the moment he finally decided to end things. And the worst part? Even though I knew what I had seen, even though I knew deep down that things weren't okay, a small part of me still hoped that maybe he didn't mean it. Maybe he was just frustrated. Maybe there was still a chance to fix this. But how do you fix something when you're too afraid to even bring it up? I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the words from his messages replayed in my head like a broken record. I just don't know if I can do this anymore. She stresses over everything. I just want to chill. I kept tossing and turning, glancing over at him as he slept peacefully beside me. How could he be so relaxed while I was lying there, feeling like my whole world was crumbling? How could he kiss me goodnight, hold me in his arms, when just hours ago, he was texting his friend about leaving me? I wanted to shake him awake and demand answers. How long have you felt this way? Why didn't you tell me? When were you planning to leave? But I couldn't. My fear of losing him was stronger than my need for the truth. The next morning, I felt like I was living in some kind of alternate reality. Everything looked the same, our apartment, our routine, but it all felt different. He kissed me on the forehead before heading to work, just like always. He sent me a text around lunch, asking how my day was going. And the whole time, I kept thinking, is this fake? Is he just going through the motions until he finally decides to end things? I started questioning everything. Every conversation, every interaction. Was he being distant, or was I just imagining it? Was he quieter than usual, or was that just my paranoia taking over? I analyzed every little thing he said, every slight change in his tone, desperate to find some kind of clue about what was going on in his head. But the worst part? I couldn't talk to him about it. Every time I thought about bringing it up, my chest tightened with panic. What if I confronted him and he confirmed my worst fear? What if he looked me in the eyes and said, "Yeah, I've been thinking about leaving you"? What if he didn't even hesitate? I wasn't ready to hear that. So instead, I spiraled. My thoughts became my worst enemy, filling every moment of silence with doubt and fear. I kept replaying every argument we'd ever had, every time I'd gotten upset over something small, every moment where I let my anxiety take over. Had I really been that difficult to be with? Had I pushed him away without realizing it? I started second-guessing everything about myself. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was too much. Maybe my stress really was suffocating him. Maybe I had been so caught up in my own worries that I never noticed how unhappy he was becoming. For the next couple of days, I tried to act normal, but I could feel the weight of what I knew pressing down on me. It was like a ticking time bomb inside me. I knew I couldn't keep this secret forever, but I also couldn't find the courage to let it explode. Instead, I found myself testing him. Little things, subtle things, just to see if he would slip up. I asked him if he was happy with me, watching his reaction carefully. He smiled and said, "Of course," but was that hesitation I saw in his eyes? Was he lying to spare my feelings? I brought up plans for the future, things we had talked about before, a trip we wanted to take, a concert we planned on going to. He agreed, but something about the way he said, "Yeah, that'll be fun," felt off. Like he was saying it just to keep the illusion going. Maybe I was imagining it. Or maybe I was finally seeing the truth. The breaking point came one night when we were out with friends. I was doing my best to push the thoughts away, to pretend everything was fine. But then, in the middle of the night, he got a text. I glanced over at his phone, and my heart dropped when I saw his friend's name again. I couldn't read the message, but just seeing his name sent a wave of panic through me. Were they still talking about it? Had my boyfriend already made his decision and was just waiting for the right moment to tell me? I excused myself and went to the bathroom, locking the door behind me as I tried to breathe. My reflection in the mirror looked different, tired, anxious, like someone who was slowly unraveling. How much longer could I pretend I didn't know? That night, when we got home, I felt like I was on the edge of a cliff, teetering between confrontation and silence. I wanted to ask him. I wanted to scream, "Just tell me the truth." But I was terrified that once I did, there would be no going back. So I asked him something else instead. Something smaller, safer. "Do you ever feel like I stress too much?" He was lying in bed, scrolling through his phone, and when I spoke, he looked over at me, a little caught off guard. "What do you mean?" he asked. I swallowed hard. Do you ever feel like I overthink things too much? That I make things harder than they need to be? He hesitated for just a second. A tiny second. But I saw it. Sometimes, he admitted. But that's just how you are. I know that. I forced a smile, nodding like his answer didn't shatter me. He knows that. But does he accept it? Does he love me despite it, or is it the very thing making him want to walk away? That night, I barely slept again. But I made a decision. I couldn't live like this, constantly waiting for the moment he decided to leave. Constantly fearing the truth instead of facing it. I had to confront him. I had to know. But once I did, there was no telling what would happen next. The next evening, as we sat on the couch together, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. The weight of what I knew had been suffocating me, eating away at every moment we spent together. I wasn't really present. I was just existing in this fog of uncertainty, waiting for the moment he would finally tell me what he had already told his friend. I turned to him, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. "This is it. Can I ask you something?" My voice came out smaller than I intended, but he looked over at me, giving me his full attention. "Of course. What's up?" I hesitated, the words catching in my throat. I had rehearsed this moment in my head 100 times, imagining different ways to bring it up, different ways he might react. But now that I was here, staring into his familiar eyes, I was terrified of what he might say next. "Are you happy with me?" I finally asked. "Like, really happy?" His brows furrowed slightly, like he wasn't expecting the question. He shifted on the couch, setting his phone aside. "Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't I be?" I swallowed hard. "Because I saw your messages. Because I know what you've been thinking. Because I know you've been talking about leaving me. But I didn't say that. Not yet." Instead, I pushed further. I've been feeling like maybe I stress too much, and it's been getting to you. Like maybe you wish things were different." I saw it then. The hesitation. The way his expression flickered just for a second, like he was deciding what to say next. And that second of hesitation told me everything. "Why are you asking me this?" His voice was careful now, guarded. I took a deep breath. "Because I already know the answer. I saw your messages with your friend." The second the words left my mouth, I felt my whole body tense, bracing for his reaction. He blinked. For a moment, he didn't say anything, just staring at me, processing. Then he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You went through my messages?" "No," I said quickly. "I wasn't snooping. Your phone was there, and I saw a notification. I didn't mean to look, but I did. And I saw what you said." My voice wavered, but I forced myself to keep going. "That being with me is draining. That you don't know if you can do this anymore." His face paled. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, like he wasn't sure what to say. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the guilt, the frustration, maybe even regret. "I was just venting," he finally said, but it didn't sound convincing. "I didn't mean," he stopped himself, exhaling heavily. "I don't know. You don't know." The words stung more than I expected. Sometimes it gets overwhelming," he admitted. "I love you, I really do. But yeah, sometimes it feels like everything stresses you out, and I don't know how to handle it. I don't know how to help you. And sometimes I wonder if maybe we just don't work." There it was. The truth. Raw and painful and real. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I had spent days agonizing over this moment, and now that it was happening, I felt strangely calm. Maybe because, deep down, I had already known. "If you don't think we work, then why are you still here?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the answer in his expression before he even said it. "Because I don't want to hurt you," he said. "And because part of me still hopes we can fix this." A silence stretched between us, heavy and full of unspoken words. I had spent so much time afraid of this moment, terrified of hearing the truth. But now that I realized something. I deserved more than someone who was staying just because they felt guilty. I took a shaky breath. I don't want you to stay if you don't truly want to. His eyes met mine, and I could see the pain there, the struggle. But I also saw the truth. He didn't know what he wanted. And that wasn't fair to either of us. Maybe we should take some space, I said, the words hurting as they left my lips. Figure out what we really want. He nodded slowly, like he had been thinking the same thing but didn't want to say it first. That night, I slept in a different room. And the next morning, we both knew things wouldn't be the same. Maybe we would find our way back to each other. Maybe we wouldn't. But for the first time in days, I felt like I was taking control of my own heart instead of waiting for someone else to decide its fate. And that, I realized, was the first step toward healing, whether it was with him or without him.